WRFM News for our sponsor, Guardian Jewellery, Toronto Town Square and the Esplanade, Warners Bay.
It's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Jacinta with 2NURFM Hunter News. The Premier is warning it'll take a long time for communities to recover from last week's deadly superstorm and floods in the Hunter and Central Coast. Mike Baird has appointed retired Brigadier Darren Norman to coordinate the response. He says the former military official is the best person to get the areas back on track.
Darren Norman, who comes with impeccable credentials, one of the leading infrastructure specialists across the Army, many projects, not just here across Australia, but across the Asia Pacific, he's been in charge of.
Floodwaters have receded to allow road access to Duckenfield and Millers Forest for the first time in several days, as warnings come that more than rain and wind could hit the Hunter later in the week. Storm-affected areas in Lake Macquarie, Port Stephens, Currabong and the city of Newcastle will be today's focus for the SES workers in the area. There have been approximately 6,800 jobs reported to the SES in the region, with 2,000 jobs still outstanding. New South Wales SES Deputy Incident Controller Dave Bushman is asking residents to remain cautious around floodwaters.
Just want to remind people not to walk, drive or ride through floodwaters. Some floodwaters, there's still some localised flooding occurring in many areas, and some of that floodwater has sewage, raw sewage and dead animals and things like that in it. So please, we're asking people to stay out of floodwaters.
18,000 Hunter homes are still without working electricity after last week's storms. Emergency crews are replacing more than 800 kilometres of conductors and service wires as part of the ongoing clean-up operation, which could take weeks. Anthony O'Brien from Ausgrid says the blackout has been extensive.
1,700 workers have been working on the network 24/7. Overnight we had crews who were patrolling power lines in Charlestown. It's been an unprecedented effort in terms of our crews on the ground who have responded to what is the biggest storm ever to have hit our electricity network throughout our entire history. There was around 50% of all homes without power north of the Hawkesbury.
Flood-affected residents in Greta could be set to receive some financial aid today as the Centrelink mobile bus rolls into town to assist victims process claims for disaster relief. Federal politicians will be on hand to help those hardest hit receive help in person, while social workers have been deployed to provide additional support. Human Services Minister Maurice Payne says various payments will be made available.
We have available a disaster recovery payment, which is for individuals whose homes have been very severely damaged or destroyed, tragically lost a family member or been seriously injured themselves. That's a payment of $1,000 for adults and $400 for children in those families.
The service centre will be stationed in High Street until 5 p.m. Meanwhile, Patterson MP Bob Baldwin says businesses impacted by the storm will be eligible for assistance too.
Funding is also available for businesses that have lost their income, for a broad section of the community, including primary producers. But there are two funds. There is a State Emergency Fund, which the federal government commits 50 to 75% depending on what the projects are, and then there is the Federal Disaster Fund, which is solely funded by the federal government.
Newcastle Council is offering free green waste and bulk storm waste for Newcastle residents at the Summerhill Waste Centre until May 10th. However, Lake Macquarie Council crews have set out today to start a curbside clean-up for green waste, hitting areas such as Warners Bay, Dudley and Catherine Hill Bay. However, Shadow Minister for the Hunter, Sonia Hornery, says the Summerhill Centre is not enough for Newcastle residents.
We know, of course, that Newcastle City Council is offering a free dumping service at Summerhill Waste Management Centre, but the problem is that there's huge delays to get there, and we're also concerned, of course, that there are some people in our community that don't have utes and trucks.
Meanwhile, Newcastle Council General Manager Ken Goldthorpe says their priorities are currently in removing unsafe and unstable trees.
All our staff are very much focused on removing the unstable trees and the green waste and damage that still exists around the local government area, and will be for the next week. And once they're able to get through that workload, then we'll start coming back and putting more resources into bulk waste pickups.
In finance, the All Ords is up 39 points at 59.45, and $1 Australian is buying 78.25 US cents.
Sport for our sponsor, NewcastleCheapestCars.com.au.
The Hunter Hurricanes have suffered an 11-9 defeat in the National Water Polo League, conceding to the Victorian Seals at Lambton Pool on Sunday. It means the Hurricanes won't make the top two for a direct semi-finals berth. But it wasn't all bad. A draw between the teams on Saturday has secured the Hurricanes a place in the National Water Polo League finals. Lake Macquarie sailing duo Nathan Outridge and Ian Jensen are approaching their final 49ers race at the International Sailing Federation World Cup. The tussle will see the London Olympic gold medal winners take on competitors in French waters at Heres in the third leg of a 6-regatta World Cup program. Outridge and Jensen hope for a place at the fourth competition in Weymouth, England from this stint, on their way to the final instalment in Abu Dhabi in October. And Newcastle-trained boxer Roxy Jurgic has added the WBA Asia Junior middleweight belt to his winning streak, defeating Adrian Campbell at Newcastle Panthers. That's sport. I'm Annabelle Regan.
2NURFM news time is 1:05.